You should be the host here.
We're laughing at you.
We're both Munster people, diehard Munster people, and we wanted to do well.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
I'd like to think I know a lot. Welcome along to the 11th episode of the Red 78 podcast, the Rugby Channel's home of everything Munster rugby. With me, Alan Quinlan, and of course, Niamh Briggs. How are you, Niamh?
Good, Quinny, in the festive cheer with my jumper. Bit disappointed that you didn't
couldn't find one. I couldn't find a Christmas jumper. I did look around.
Well, you went with a pink jumper, so I suppose it's
nice,
close enough to Santa.
It's a little bit of colour for Christmas. Well, do you think Spurs should have beaten Liverpool on Sunday?
We were in the season of giving, weren't we? We like to give chances and points away. But an improvement.
Yeah, I wasn't. I didn't enjoy it. No, I'll be honest. Harry Kane should have been red anyway, in my opinion, and
he got the ball.
That's what he said afterwards. Yeah, exactly.
That was the most ridiculous interview afterwards, wasn't it? I got the ball, no, there was loads of incidents. We should have had a penalty. Do you know what I mean?
So will you stop, will you? Anyway, we better get on with this. Don't forget to get in touch with your thoughts on all things Munster. You can tweet us at Rugby Channel 15 or search for the Rugby Channel on YouTube and leave a comment. And of course, to subscribe to the podcast, just search for the Red 78 and you'll get the podcast straight to your phone every week. Okay, well, we had some rugby anyway again. Not the same excitement and high of the previous week in the Wasps game. A number of the players who were stuck in South Africa and got home initially, the first group home, they were back involved. What did you make of the overall performance? We'll get down into the nitty gritty of it in a few minutes, but what were your feelings afterwards?
Yeah, look, I thought it was a difficult game to watch. I'd imagine it was a difficult game to play because when you play, you want to playing with tempo, and I just think there was so much stop-start. I think there was a huge amount of penalties, double figures of lineouts, double figures of scrums, and when you're looking at that, I think Matt Carley was very pernickety and just didn't let the game flow. I think that Munster, we saw against Wasps, we've seen again at times this season in the UPC that, when they have tempo, when they get to play with pace, then they're very dangerous. I think the Castres, almost like in soccer terms, parked the bus. They didn't really want to play. They were happy enough just to form a line across the pitch. And they defended very well, to be fair to them, and they created a lot of issues for Munster at the breakdown, but they didn't really offer a huge amount either in attack. So, and I was frustrated because for me, I actually thought for the first time this season that backline looked like they were going at pace. They looked like they were a threat. But yes, they didn't really get a huge platform to work off, and so frustrating. But I can totally see it. You just spoke about lads coming back there. Jack O'Donoghue, who spoke after the game, it was a 7 or 8 week without a match, and while it can refresh you, I think that cohesion and that timing, they missed. And look, it was going to be always very difficult too in terms of the mental high over the previous couple of weeks in terms of those young lads coming in and that Wasps game. I just think that they did well. I'm just disappointed that they allowed Castres to get a losing bonus point.
How much of a factor is the emotional and kind of mental toll of what's happened in the last couple of weeks? Because I think sometimes I'm mixed on it. It was a poor performance, but there's mitigation there and there's reasons probably why, given that they hadn't played in so long, lots of players, they certainly hadn't played together as a team either. So, and Castres made it very, very difficult for them. But I think overall the emotional kind of turmoil that they've gone through and 2 training sessions last week, 6-day turnaround, quite difficult. We both know as former players that it is quite difficult to gel and get it right there. So should we allow that mitigation to be not an excuse, but a major factor in the performance?
Oh, I think you have to. I think you know as well as anyone, when you're churning out performances week in, week out, to be able to get to that mental pitch. And we've spoken about it before. And I think, it's not an excuse. It's just a fact that it's very difficult to, when you become so mentally charged for a game, to pick yourself up 6 days later is really difficult, and you're never going to reach the highs. I think Warren Gatland said it best after England beat New Zealand in the 2019 semi-final of the World Cup. He knew, he was like, there's no way, I fully believe that they're not going to beat South Africa in the final, because it's so hard to put such a, an all-in performance and to repeat it 7 days later. It's not just the physical toll, it's the mental toll it takes on you. And I think there was so much off the pitch stuff, and to be fair to those senior lads, they really took it by the scruff of the neck. And but to come down on top of that, like, coming back into the dressing room after that Wasps game, everybody's celebrating, it's huge. The academy lads are getting pictures with the senior lads. It's like, cheering beers. And then, I hope that they went and had a few beers after it, because I think that was going to be really important for them. But also, 2 or 3 days later, you're back for your review and you're trying to get them to come back down, and then to bring them straight back up, within 2 or 3 days, it's a very difficult thing to do.
I think Munster fans would have taken, and the team probably would have taken 9 points before these 2 games. And hypothetically, we say none of the other stuff happened. I think if you looked at Wasps and we're going to Wasps and getting an away win with 4 points, it would have been great. And you'd have been hoping for 5 against Castres at home. So probably in the reverse, the way it happened was maybe what people expected and would have really hoped for. But still 9 points out of 10 in 2 games is a positive. But there was a lot of basic errors, I thought, and I think Damien Dialende summed it up pretty well after the game. There was a lot of kind of risky passes and offloads and loose balls and turnovers, and they could just never get going. Should they be better as top quality players, even though they've gone through a lot and they've had very little preparation together? Yeah, you could argue that they should be better. The basics should have been better, and that maybe when you don't play matches, that maybe you lose a bit of zip and that match sharpness and stuff that you would expect. And I think Cass then were probably, and I think most people will agree with this, they'd made a number of changes last week. They didn't really want to be there. Their president said it before the game, given the postponements of lots of fixtures and the travel issues that the French government issued, that they didn't want their teams going not to the UK anyway, and it created a lot of uncertainty with loads of postponements. They didn't want to be there, and it kind of deflated the whole experience, didn't it? The whole atmosphere, given Munster's performance and Cass being pretty negative. So, but part of me thinks there's certain areas they should have been a lot better in. They should have been a little bit more protective of the ball and a little bit more patient in what they were trying to do. Yeah,
absolutely. Look, I think you can look at that in twofold. Okay, so Cass definitely didn't want to be there. It's very, very obvious. They were almost belligerent in terms of how they defended. And then, that was
do you think there was an expectation after the high last week that it would just happen?
100%.
The crowd would get behind them, 20,000, over 20,000 there, and it would all just fall into place.
I think from a supporter's point of view, there was definitely an expectation for sure. I just think that the Cass, that was the 2nd/3rd string for Cass that they sent over. It's just pure stubbornness. I think for me, though, on the flip side of Munster, look, I'm glad that not glad, but you want to see them pushing those passes, those offloads. And the thing is that, if they just tucked up jumper, didn't have any passes, just one out runners, we'd be absolutely lambasting them here today. Look, they tried things, did it work? No, you're going to get days that doesn't work. The issue being is that when it's not working, you've got to learn to play yourself back into a game. So literally for, it's taken somebody to say at a break of play, okay, for the next, and you must have had these conversations about the breakdown, nobody going near the breakdown, we're not getting anything. Nobody, just take the ball into contact, look after it, we'll rock over it and we'll set it up. And we play ourselves into the game that way. I think when, you're losing momentum because of drop passes and handling errors, you've just got to be able to find that balance to be able to rein that back in. And then the more you play yourself into the game, it could take 70 minutes. Then the more those offloads.
A lot of that stuff is down to good decision making, and I think mentally, they didn't make those good decisions. They didn't make the right calls and right. Their application was poor there as well, and it was probably summed up by Damien Dialende, who played pretty well. To be fair, he was the player of the match. the pass that he probably should have just given, simple pass to John Klein, and he scores, but he went himself, and then I still think it was a try. I think there was no separation there, and I think it was the wrong call. Jack O'Donoghue's for me was a little bit more suspect. I really thought there was no separation for Damien D'Alinde's one, but he should have passed it, and that possibly summed up what was just the whole match, really, in a sense.
Yeah, but I also think, there was a lot of good individual performances. I thought, obviously, Damien D'Alinde played very well. I thought Ben Healy was excellent. I thought that the back line, they looked threatening. I thought Niall Scanlon, did a huge amount of dirty work. I do think that when you have individuals that are performing well, the cohesiveness, that teamwork can come. And I think they'll be much the better for it from. And to be fair, Quinny, look, I'm not the eternal optimist. I know I'm not. But I'm not sure Munster would have won a game like that 12, 18 months ago. That dirty game. And when you don't play well and you win dirty games, they can do a lot for you as a group. And they're not, they'll go into a review, Monday morning review and know that it wasn't good enough. And Van Grant said they didn't play well enough, to be fair. And they'll know that. But for me, a lot of that is very fixable in terms of those handling errors, the basics, the looking after the ball. Castres were really, very dangerous at the breakdown that could create havoc. And for when Munster, the first clearer would take the ball, the cast defender away, they always had a second one in really quickly. And it was almost that Munster needed to go to 2 in at the breakdown straight away. So there's no separation, so they can secure that ball. But look, it was and the kicking out of hand at times wasn't great. So coupled with that, I think they're all very fixable things. But I just do think that the fact that no games for a long time, and look, it's very easy to jump on the back of, Van Grant having announced he's going.
Yeah, because
I
think that's a fact. I think that's possibly a factor with the negativity around the game. Because look, as a player, I've been in that situation, particularly in Europe before, where you have a poor performance against a team at home, and then you go away and you produce a brilliant. We had it against Perpignan in 2009 when Perpignan should have beaten us in Thomond Park. Possibly should have beaten us. It was very close. I think Rog got a kick late on to win it for us. They were ahead with a couple of minutes to go. And it was a really flat performance from a very experienced Munster side. And we went in the return leg then, and we got a 5-try bonus point win where everybody wrote us off, said that we were finished. We were too old as a team. They were incredibly hard to beat, Perpignan, in their home ground, and we went there and produced a brilliant performance. One of the best away performances that I was involved in with Munster over my time. So there's probably, with what happened with Johan van Graan last week, announcing that he's leaving, Bath then the following day announcing that he signed, loads of question marks about where his head is going to be, his preparation, his planning, and lots of negativity after the match. I saw stuff online and social media, and even just chatting to people. They're kind of jumping on that straight away, that it's really negative now. And I think it's a little bit unfair. So just to reiterate the point and reinforce the point we're making, and I think we're both in agreement to this, I would say, it was a flat performance, lots of errors, lots of mistakes, poor discipline at times, but lots of factors to go with that. And that's why I think it's a little bit unfair to go too heavy on him. Are the Munster fans demanding? Yes. Were people leaving Thomond Park the other night frustrated and irked a bit? Yes, for sure. The whole atmosphere went very, very flat. And look, sometimes it's not up to the players to get the crowd going. The crowd have got to get in behind the team. But I think they're the reasons. And I do think it is a factor. And I just think it's really key now how Johan van Graan manages this himself with his own players and the psychology of any of them thinking. And I've thought about this. For me as a player being there, it's different when the coach is leaving. It can galvanize you and you want to finish on a high, or you can get a little bit bitchy and snappy and create a little bit of a negativity and be a little bit of a drain on the group. So I think that is the key to a lot of the senior players, that they've got to get hold of each other. Caroline Currett, the sports psychologist, will play a really important role in how she deals with the players and making sure that, you know, they are a very united group. And we've heard that. And I think the last couple of weeks would have been fantastic. Just look at where we were last week. It was all positive. It was all these young players coming through. It was a remarkable win. And then that sport, isn't it? It's
completely.
It's difficult, and people they find a narrative, which I'm not saying is completely wrong, and I don't think you are. It's somewhere in the middle. It was a poor performance, and there was reasons, and you know the fans have probably reason to be frustrated with the performance overall. But I think it's important that they understand what's gone on the last number of weeks and the mental toll of that as well. And I think Johan leaving as well. So he's in a situation now where he wants to finish on a high, but I think they have to find a little bit of spark now in this next block of fixtures.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think sport's incredibly fickle, isn't it? And one week you're up, the next week you're down, and I think that's probably what draws us to it. We love it so much. I'm not really buying into the fact that they had a flat performance because Johan van Graan has announced that he's leaving. I think
it can be a factor, though. It can be a factor.
I don't buy it.
Maybe not.
They're professionals, and Johan is a consummate professional.
I'm not saying I believe that either, but I think the people on the outside, that's what they kind of jumped on social media.
Oh, completely. And I thought that's the easy thing, though, Quinny.
Some of the papers kind of grasped it because he's leaving now, that this is going to be.
But it's the easy thing to blame.
Yeah, it is.
And I just, that to me is just, it's so far incorrect when you look at everything that's gone on over the last few weeks. The biggest thing for me, not even about the COVID situation, is the game time that they lacked. I think they lacked, a lot of them hadn't played in 7 or 8 weeks. That's a huge amount for any professional. That bar COVID, I don't know any other time in most professionals' careers where they go 8 weeks without a game. And, Jack Donagh was in an article in the paper yesterday, and he even spoke about, for the first 20 minutes, he was just like, blowing, like trying to get his legs back into himself. And that's going to take time and take toll. And yeah, look, I think that you draw a line under that now, and you just start focusing on Leinster.
Yeah, one of the big positives for me that obviously we did speak a little bit about last week. There was 12 European debutants versus Wasps. They were all very highlighted, but there was 5 against Castres: Dermot Byrne, Kenyon Knox, Jack Crowley, Alex Kendall, and Jason Jenkins. So that's 17 European debutants over the first 2 rounds of Europe, which is incredible, really. So that's something that is pretty unique, isn't it, would you say? And obviously it's a big positive that these guys have been exposed to this level of rugby.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's class. I think there's so many good names in that. I think it was brilliant for Munster fans to see Jason Jenkins. Obviously, he's been injured since they've signed him. He looked like a big man, didn't he, to be fair to him. The likes of Jack Crowley and Alex Kendall, obviously their underage career has put them on a trajectory, and everybody's really excited. But, I'm so excited to see them get more game time. So, look, I think it's been a really solid 2 weeks for Munster. They'd be really, really happy. 9 points.
And the big disappointment that we didn't mention was Joey Carberry, and how unlucky he was to get injured last week against Wasps. And he's going to spend a spell now on the sidelines again, which is so unfortunate for him. And he's a big loss to Munster, but he fractured his elbow. Ben Healy, Jack Crowley, do you think they're good enough and are capable of stepping up to the plate in the next couple of weeks now?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I think that Ben Healy has really grown over the last kind of 12 months for me. I think he's been excellent every time he's played with Munster this season. He seems to, we always knew, I watched him playing Schools Cup here in Limerick, and his boot was obviously always something that was attributed to how well he was playing at underage. But for me right now, he's managing games very, very well. There was often question marks whether his running game, how he could do it. I think we saw in the Scarlets game how good he can be on the gain line. I think we saw it at times the other day. He's also an incredibly big man. I'm not even off the shoulder when I chat to him, and he's defensively sound. Like, I think he's ready to go now, and to be able to play over the next few weeks. Look, he's a very different type of player to Troy Carberry. Let's not start comparing like for like.
I think he's a very good player and he's done brilliant. Part of me wants to see more of Jack Crowley, though. I agree. 100%, I think he has that little bit of spark and stuff that maybe they're different players, aren't they? And what's important now is controlling the game as a 10 and dealing with the ups and downs and the pressures. It's a pivotal position, and it's one that you take a fair bit of responsibility when you go out and play.
I just love that he doesn't have any fear, Quinny. There's a penalty anywhere within his own 10-metre line to the opposition goal, and he's always goading Peter O'Mahony to go for boasts. Like, do you know what I mean? So, look, I think it's a really, really good opportunity for those two young lads. Hopefully they both stay fit so they can both get a good amount of game time, and then, please God, we'll see Joey back in the new year.
So there's going to be a lot of changes in the next couple of weeks. That's what Johan said yesterday in his press conference. Simon Zebo will come back into the mix. Mike Haley. We haven't seen Zebo, have we? And we spoke about his excitement, and you just think that he does have that ability to ignite the crowd and get them going. And for me, I hope he gets some sort of a decent run and can show us what he's capable of and what he can bring to Munster in the next couple of weeks. There were some headlines in the English papers this week about Declan Kidney. Obviously, Munster have to get a head coach, an assistant coach for Stephen Larkham and Johan van Graan. But there's talks in the papers, and I met some of the headlines in the English press, that Declan Kidney, who's now currently the Director of Rugby in London Irish, that he's been linked with that Director of Role Rugby in Munster. I think some people... Just to clarify this is speculation, and we don't even know if Munster are going to appoint a director of rugby. We know they have to get a head coach and an assistant coach. But I did hear in the grapevine a number of weeks back, and I've heard this talk for a little while now, that it's something Munster were interested in doing, is putting in a director of rugby. So there's so much going on when you're in the provincial setup like that, trying to run the academies and oversee development, the whole rugby programs right from the senior team down. I think it's a good idea to get a director of rugby. And I think he would be an exceptional man to come back and do that job and be a director of rugby for Munster. Again, speculation, we don't know. What's your take on that? And you saw the headlines as well.
Yeah, look, I think... to be fair, when we spoke about Johan leaving a while back, that was something that I had said it would be brilliant for Munster to get a director of rugby in, because it just takes the whole off the pitch stuff away from that coach and, that head coach and then that coaching ticket, and they can just concentrate on that. I think that's definitely something, the way the game has gone now. And Leinster are a prime example. Leo Cullen's done an unbelievable job as that director of rugby type role. And it separates then the pitch, on pitch stuff and off pitch stuff. So like, I'm all for it. I do think that Declan Kidney has done a very, very good job over in London Irish. Like, incredibly good job. That's
originally what Rasty Erasmus came in as director of rugby when Anthony Axel was head coach.
And then Jack and I think that was a really good, that's a really good system, especially for an Irish side. And, as I said there, Declan Kidney has done a really, really good job over in London Irish. Like, they are going very, very well. And they're playing a really nice brand of rugby too. And him, you've played under him, you understand that connection with Munster. Like, how much as a supporter, would they love to see somebody like that back in there? By all accounts, he was an incredible man manager. I don't know, you probably know better than I would, obviously.
Yeah, he was. And I think he was brilliant at organising loads of stuff away from the rugby field and managing structures and central to a lot of change that happened in the whole organisation throughout his time, particularly the first time he was head coach. He's really shrewd at that. He's a former school teacher. We felt like schoolboys at the start. I certainly did, and I had to be kept in line by him. But I think there's a real decency around Declan, and he gets people and he tries to understand people, and the environment is really, really important to him. And that can be difficult for a head coach sometimes when there's so many moving parts around, and it brings added pressure. And I think a setup like this for Munster would, in my opinion, work very well. And he knows Munster inside out. He's had obviously great success in winning the 2 European Cups. And his organizational skills are brilliant. I think he was very shrewd and always has been in his, when he had head coach roles, about the people he appointed underneath him and the coaches, essentially to do a lot of the on-field stuff. And he recognized that over the years, that he gave people responsibility to deliver in their certain roles. And I think he was brilliant at all that over the years. So he's done a really good job at London Irish, got him promoted the first year of trying, and has him playing a brilliant round of rugby. They're the top scorers in the Premiership, try scorers. Now, I don't know if Declan has a hands-on role in going out on the coaching field, because Les Kiss is the head coach, Brad Davies is assistant coach, Declan Danner, there's a load of other coaches, but I think Declan is running and he's overseeing the recruitment, the running of all the academies, the development, player signings, all that kind of stuff. So I think a role like that in Munster would be really good, and I think Munster fans would love to see him back. So we don't know if it's true or what the story is, or whether he's interested in doing that. I imagine at some stage he would love to come back home, but it's a personal thing. Niamh, we're back on. We thought we finished our podcast yesterday, but for obvious reasons, the Munster-Leinster game has been called off, and that's why we're back on. It wasn't obvious that it was going to be cancelled with COVID. It's something we were all looking forward to on Stephen's Day, and it's disappointing. It's probably frustrating for everyone. Maybe Munster will be the winners here financially, that if this game is refixed sometimes during the Six Nations, if they can find a date for it, that maybe if crowds are reinstated, that they can get crowds back in there and get 15,000, 20,000 back. It was a sellout, 26,500. That was obviously a big disappointment for the from a financial point of view last week. But what's your take on this? How unsettling is it? Is it you disappointed by it? Will the players be?
Yeah, I think you'd be very disappointed. I think that, it's just been really stop-starty for Munster since that break in November. And I think they'll be really good at it. I think that last week's game wasn't brilliant, so I think they would like to have tried to right a few wrongs there and get back on the pitch. But also, look, a couple of things, right? Obviously, we hope that everybody affected by this in Leinster is okay and well, and there's nobody incredibly sick, but also from a Munster point of view, fans point of view, this is the big fixture of the year, isn't it? And it's just been, huge disappointing. I think when the news filtered through yesterday, more disappointing for us that we had to come back on, I think. But yeah, look, it is a bit gutty. And the bigger picture here is that, another game gone and another opportunity for players to be able to play. And I think that's the biggest thing. There's the way the URC is now, is that it's very limited games, very limited opportunities for young lads to get game time. And I just think from that point of view, it's been really disappointing.
And I think obviously the new system this year, where there wouldn't be any games during the November internationals or Six Nations, that's obviously going to change now, and that does, as you say, limit the opportunities for younger players to play. So we know Munster have to go back to South Africa to play the Bulls and the Lions in March, the last two Six Nations games. So they'll be missing their internationals, and that's an opportunity in a window for players, albeit they'll be coming up probably against full-strength South African sides. This Leinster match, it was called off last Christmas as well. So game time, I think, is a real issue here, and match practice for players, because I think there's a number of players in the Munster squad that maybe have 3 or 4 games played this season, 5 games. It's.
Should look at Zebo, 2 games.
2 games for Zebo, yeah. I think there's, and probably the 14 guys. I know there was some management and involved in that. The ones that had to quarantine in South Africa and then quarantine when they come home, they'll have done very, very little in a long, long time. So maybe, I think from a match practice point of view, it's frustrating and disappointing, but it's probably an opportunity to do a little kind of, a lot of those guys need to get the body up and running again, and get into the gym and do fitness sessions and maybe fire the body up a little bit. So it is what it is. There's nothing they can do. It's disappointing. I think the disappointment of having only 5,000 fans there and people looking forward to it for Christmas and all that kind of stuff. And then you're probably getting some consolation. But from Leinster's point of view, I think, has it become pretty obvious that EPCR's COVID review committee made a right decision last week? And does this kind of weaken the defence of Leinster and their opportunity to appeal? Because obviously, Leinster tested on Wednesday. They had a high number of cases on Thursday. They came out and said that, you know, they're 23 players fit and COVID free to go to France. Is there something we don't know here, that maybe some of those players were mixing with that 23, and that there was a potential, and maybe some of those 23 players now have COVID that were named to play Montpellier? Because obviously, if they haven't, well, then why aren't the 23 players that were named from Montpellier coming down to Limerick to play? So I think it does show that maybe EPCR were right here. Montpellier had no cases past Monday. As hard as that is, and as frustrating as that to listen to for Leinster people, I think that is the case. EPCR got this right, and it does weaken the opportunity to appeal it. And I think that's something that is probably blatantly obvious now. Now, I think what I've seen online as well is still people saying, well, the Wasps Munster game went ahead on the previous Sunday when Wasps had cases maybe confirmed on Saturday night or Sunday morning. We don't know, so we're speculating on this one, and maybe speculating a little bit on where Leinster are at. Maybe, but I would imagine that the game is called off because some of those 23 players have now got COVID. It's obviously, maybe we're wrong.
Yeah, it's obviously hard to know. I think that's the big thing. It's difficult to understand, and we're not privy, and we don't know. But I just think there's a huge. They need a circuit breaker, and unfortunately, you know, it's this game, and I think that hopefully for everybody involved, both provinces, you know, likes of Connacht and Ulster as well, that circuit breaker of one game will allow the other games to go ahead. But you're right. I think it does make the appeal to the EPCR very difficult.
And they probably took a bit of flack last week, EPCR, for that decision. And maybe all of us kind of felt a little bit that was the case. And maybe it would have been better to actually, for them to say, well, we based it on this reason. I think maybe the reason is fairly obvious, that Leinster had cases later in the week and Montpellier didn't. But look, that's not our business. It's just disappointing that this game is gone, and frustrating for players. I think they want to get back up and running again. And
I was just more disappointed.
For all the fans.
Yeah, I'm just more disappointed that our brilliant preview of the game, Quinny, is gone now. And
our preview yesterday started naming players, and we were talking about individual battles. With a view to. And I said this when I played these Christmas derbies, or even sometimes they would have been on in October. They're all with a view to try and going head to head with your opposition and maybe trying to get a place in the Irish squad. And this game changes that a little bit. We did a good preview yesterday, and that was intriguing me, some of those battles. And look, every year we're always talking about, have the Interbros lost a little bit of bite? What do they mean to the players? Are they all buddy because it's Team Ireland a lot in the last number of years, which getting that balance right, the same kind of bitterness and probably narkiness isn't there now, but unfortunately, we won't get to see that on Sunday, because we were both hopeful we'd see an exciting kind of sparky game, and hoping for a Munster win against a very strong and powerful Leinster squad. But it's gone now, and that's disappointing, and they've got to move on. Ulster Connacht will go ahead, so that's something to watch on Stephen's Day. And Leinster are not going to go back training, I think, till the 28th, I think.
Yeah.
And as you said, look, let's hope they're all okay and nobody is they all recover, whatever players have COVID or management or part of their squad, and hopefully they can get back up and running. And we'll be back, I think, next week to look at Connacht. If I remember rightly, so the game in Connacht last year, Munster were quite comfortable, I think. Well, I wouldn't say quite comfortable, but it looked like they were going to win the game. They had a little bit of a comfort scoreline. And the last 10 minutes, it just went. Connacht came at them. Munster, 2 players sin binned. They had a scrum on the line to possibly win the game and didn't win the game. So that one will certainly be one to look forward to. And the way Connacht have played at times, a few frustrating performances for them. The Dragons one stands out, but they'll be relishing Munster coming up to the sports ground just after Christmas. And
we'll be fine. We'll get games eventually.
Yeah, they will. Yeah. But anyway, look, big happy Christmas to everyone. If you want to tweet us, you can tweet us at the Rugby Channel 15. And wherever you get your podcasts, you can download the Red 78. And unfortunately, we have no match, but hopefully everyone has a lovely Christmas and a happy new year. And we'll be back next week to hopefully look forward to that game against Connacht.
The Munster Rugby Podcast, Red 78 with Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster Rugby better.